Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Andy and this video will be all about playing treaty in Age of Empires 3. So I've divided this video into 3 parts. The first part will all be about booming, so to get your economy to the maximum. The second part will be about building your base up and getting all your upgrades for your units. And the last part will be about the part when the treaty ends and you have to destroy your enemy in that part. We'll also talk about good civilizations and civilizations which are a bit harder to play in treaty. And at the end I will also talk about decks, so what are the general thoughts when making a treaty deck. So in the first part of every treaty game you want to get your economy rolling, and that means you'll get your maximum amount of villagers and also all the upgrades, including the Age 5 economy upgrades. So at the start of the game in Age 1 you want to gather all your starting resources and also use your explorer to get some treasures. Compared to supremacy, you're not in a hurry to get up to Age 2 usually, because you can stick around in Age 1 for longer and get your economy rolling, get the market upgrades, get a trading post on a trading route if there is one, or also get some fish if you have a water map. Generally you want to be late to Age 2 and fast to Age 3, because Age 2 isn't giving you so much benefit. But you want to be fast to Age 3 because then you can get your extra TCs out. Usually you click up to Age 2 at around 17 to 20 villagers, and you use politicians which boost your eco, so that will be for example 2 villagers and 2 cows, or you could also get wood or food crates. After clicking up, you adjust your economy so you can click up right to Age 3 when you hit Age 2, so that means you need to get 1,200 food and 1,000 gold, and so you adjust your villagers according to that. As a Age 3 ageup politician you usually use the covered wagon or the faster ageup. Remember that once you clicked up you want to send your explorer home, so that you can start building your TCs right when you hit Age 3. Also during ageup you have to get enough wood to get your extra TCs out, so that means you need 500 or 1000 wood, depending if you could ageup with the covered wagon or not. After gathering enough wood for TCs, you can split up your villagers again. You won't need as many on wood anymore, you only need some for your market upgrades and for your houses. So you will need mostly food because you have a 3 TC production now, and that's very food intensive. You also want to send some to gold so that you will get up to Age 4 eventually. You want to get up to Age 4 as quickly as possible without idling your TCs. So that's generally your goal, you don't ever want to idle your TCs. For ageup politician you could pick trades or some other economy, so if you have villagers for example, or you could also have long-term upgrades. Once you clicked up to Age 4 you want to split your wills again, so you want to have 2/3 on food, 1/3 on gold, and you also want to have 5 on wood, so you always have enough for houses. Once you are Age 4, you want to send your factories immediately and get them up, so you can have extra economy. You also want to get up to Age 5 as fast as possible, so you can get your Imperial upgrades, and you usually do that by staying as long as possible on natural resources, so on hunts and on mines. And you also want to go to Age 5 without idling your TCs again. Good Age 5 time usually for treaty is 17 to 20 minutes. It always depends on your civilization, but you can get to Age 5 in 17 to 20 minutes with all civilizations. Age 5 politicians you usually pick a long-term upgrade if you can pick it. So for example it could be a hot air balloon or the mercenary upgrades or something like that, or you could also just pick the gold. Once you clicked up you split your wills evenly, so you gather all resources somewhat at the same rate, and you also start to get mills and estate to get the upgrades out. In Age 5 you want to get out the capital as fast as possible, and you want to get the food, wood and gold gather rate upgrades as soon as possible. If you haven't already, you put your factories on wood, and also you want to get your maximum amount of villagers out. In the first part you only send cards which benefit you immediately, so that will usually be economic theory, royal coin mint, refrigeration and factories. Okay, to summarize the first part, your goal is to get to Age 5 as fast as possible and also get your maximum builds out as soon as possible. And you do this by staying longer in Age 1 and getting market upgrades, then quickly go to Age 3 and get extra TCs, and you also want to stay on natural resources as long as possible. In the second part we will build our empire, so that means we are getting all the upgrades and also an army up so we can fight when the treaty ends, and also we get all our buildings out. If you haven't already, you switch your economy to a estate or mill or rice paddy economy. You also want to get the rest of your upgrade buildings, so that will be the church and the arsenal, and you also want to get the upgrades of those buildings. Then you want to start building walls around your base and military production buildings, so that will be barracks, stables and foundries. There are two ways to do it. Either you make your walls at the edge of your radius where you can build and put your military buildings inside the walls, or you make your walls around your economy and make the military production outside of it. You can do it both ways. I've seen both things pretty successfully. Personally, I prefer to have my buildings outside of the walls, my military production buildings, but you can do both ways. Do whatever you prefer. Once you have your military production buildings out, you start getting upgrades of the units you want to do. Usually that will be skirmishers, hussars, musketeers, dragoons and some cannons, so cavalryns, mortars and horse artillery. But yeah, if you feel like making halberdiers, you can also upgrade them. So that's just you want to get the upgrades ready before the treaty ends. So what are the cards you want to send before the treaty ends? Usually that will be the mill and the estate gather rate cards. Then advanced arsenal, advanced church, fencing school and riding school. Those are the cards I usually want to have before the treaty ends. Usually you want to have all your upgrades, all your military buildings and all your walls at around the 35 to 38 minute mark, and then you want to make a big army. You also want to do your overpopping techniques, so that means usually you want to get 199 units out, and then if you have a unit shipment you can send it so you can get over 200 pop. Also once you are over 200 pop, you will use your upgrades to get more units. So for natives those are usually the big button upgrades, or if you have the advanced church card, there are usually some units you can get. So you usually can get up to 250 pop out of military. Send your main army somewhere you want to apply pressure. So that means usually right in the middle. And then usually the enemy will come with his army and then you will fight. And whoever wins that fight can get his barracks or his military productions up in the beginning and keep applying pressure. So that will be what you do with your main army. But then you also want to use little groups of units to get the sides and the not so important part of the maps. So you want to get the trade posts, you want to snipe villagers who are at the side of the map and maybe want to build walls or barracks later. You also start sending your wilds out around the map. Usually they're around the map anyway because there's still wood and your wood villagers are gathering the wood. But you want to keep them on the map even after the treaty ends, so you can get walls and military production buildings everywhere. So to summarize this part, you want to make all your walls, you want to build all your military buildings, you want to get all your upgrades, and you want to make a big army and contest the map. So the third part will be about what you do when the treaty ends and how you destroy your enemy after the treaty ends. Right when the treaty ends, you want to win the first fight and also start immediately building military production behind your army so you can continue to pump out units. Places where no fighting is happening, you want to build up bases, walls and also maybe some forts. You also want to deny your enemy from doing that, so you want to snipe wilds who are running around on the map. You also want to get control of the natives, because with the natives you can get extra military and that means you have a bigger army and you will continue to trade better. So let's briefly talk about army compositions. The usual army composition is skirm, dragoons and cannons, but you can also go for musketeers, hussars and cannons. But usually what ends up happening is you have your starting army compositions, so for example your skirmishers and your dragoons, and then if you start losing your dragoons, the enemy will start to make melee cavalry and try to take advantage of the fact that you don't have the counter for it at the moment. Basically, you use your production buildings to quickly react to how the enemy army is at the moment. So when you're defending, you usually want to have ranged units, so you want to have cannons, skirmishers and goons, because those will clump up between your buildings, and so it's harder for the enemy to get in melee range. When you're pushing, you want to use mortars and also cannons, and once you breach the walls, you want to use your melee to get into his economy. On GT there are 3 ways to win a game. The first is to break through the enemy walls or defense and wipe his economy, so kill all his villagers. That means he will run out of resources and won't be able to replenish it, and also won't be able to make an army to stop you from destroying him completely. The second way to win a treaty game is to take better fights, so that means you're trading more effectively. He's using more units to stop you or to attack you, and then at some point he will run out of resources, and then you, because you traded better, have resources left and can start pushing him back or push through his defense, and then you wipe him and win the game. So the third way to win a treaty game is to take all the map, so that he's only in his space. So that means you have all the trading posts, can take all the natives, and so at some point, because he is so stuck in his space, he will naturally take worse fights, and at some point he will also lose them. But that's the rarest form of victory in treaty, because that means you are equally matched, are trading roughly equally, and also can't break through the walls and into the enemy economy. Some other thoughts about winning conditions are that if you run out of resources while you are pushing, you can also just slow down your push and regroup your army more often. That means your economy or your resources will go up again, and then once you have back enough resources, you can start to push again. To summarize this part, you usually win a treaty game if the enemy is out of resources, is out of production buildings, so out of space, or out of economy, so he doesn't have any villagers left. So 2 of those conditions have to apply, then the enemy has lost the game. So for example, if you don't have resources and don't have economy, your production buildings are useless because you can't use them. If you don't have production buildings and don't have economy, you can't use your resources you might still have in your bank, and so on. Let's briefly talk about decks. Your treaty 40 decks usually only consists of upgrades, so that will be unit upgrades and economic upgrades and factories. You usually also put in an endless card, which is often an endless native warrior card. So for example, the 2-piece for the Portuguese. About civilizations, avoid picking Lakota, Haudenosaunee and Dutch because they are very weak. Apart from them, you can justify playing all civilizations. The best one being the Portuguese or the Swedes at the moment. This will be the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I see you guys around. Bye bye.